Welcome everyone to today's webinar on how AI is impacting place marketing. We have this subtitle here, Will AI Kill the Place Marketing Star? And if you're a pop culture fan, you probably know what that is related to. It is from the famous song, which refers to radio and TV. When TV came along, was it going to kill the radio star? And as it turns out, we are really, really terrible as human beings at predicting things at the beginning of a massive change. When all this disruption comes about, we make these grandiose predictions about what will never be the same. And it ends up usually being wrong, although many times there are lasting changes. And that is really what we're here to talk about today. We saw it with COVID as well, where everyone said the office was dead, big cities were never going to be the same again. And yes, while big cities have changed and while the office environment has changed, there have been some lasting impacts, but nothing like what we saw when those first predictions came out when that disruption was starting. And so we're going to carry that theme over to AI and look at some of the ways in which AI is changing marketing, place marketing overall, but also the ways that it's not changing that. And we'll try to find the underlying themes that we can really rely on to take us forward in this time of severe change. If at any point you have a question, please do drop it into the Q&A function within the webinar, and I will try to answer these as we go along. But first, let's do a quick introduction. Hello, I think I've met most of you, but not all of you. I am Steve Duncan. I am the Managing Director of C Studios. I am based in the Netherlands, and I've been in the industry for about 20 years. So trying to bring a lot of that expertise into this topic today. If you're not familiar with who C Studios is, we are a marketing communications agency that specializes in representing places, and we provide services from brand positioning and international strategy to digital marketing implementation. So we are Europe-based, and we are very familiar with working with a lot of groups that are exactly the type of people that are on this call. And so just a brief introduction about myself and who we are, but let us jump into things. We're going to look at 5 major impacts of AI on place marketing. And we're going to start with one of them that is perhaps the one that is at the top of all of our lists, which is search. And the big theme here is that search is changing, but it is more evolving rather than going through a full revolution. When you actually look at the data shows a very different picture than what the headlines show. When we look at that data, yes, we know ChatGPT is a top 5 search destination now. Adoption actually in Europe is outpacing the US. We know historically US is a first adopter, so maybe some of that is slowing down for natural causes. But ChatGPT is definitely becoming a part of the search experience and the search process. And really, when we look even deeper at it, this second data point here is a limited survey of people in the US that are heavy users of AI. And they rely, it's about 50-50. They rely on traditional search about half the time and AI search about half the time for more basic searches. But the more and more complex that these topics are, the more they are relying on AI. And that is a trend that is going to continue. If you think about your own search habits now, this is probably the case where if you have a complex task or a complex query, you no longer want to see 10 results on Google. You want to just go to AI. Despite all of this, despite ChatGPT's inclusion in the headlines and all the press about how AI is taking over and how long are we going to get to these more advanced forms of AI, Google still has 90% of the market share. Now, yes, that does include AI overviews, which is an AI feature. However, it does not include Gemini, And it shows that while, yes, a lot of us that are fast to change with the times are very quickly adapting to AI, most people are not. Most people are still going the traditional route. And when you look at the data, it's actually quite impressive how much traditional search has stayed the same. If you look at this comparison here, there's a calculation, but the bottom line is there are approximately 37 million searches per day on ChatGPT. There are 14 billion a day on Google. Google's number of searches has actually continued to rise. It's just that their market share has decreased a little bit. They used to be 95, 98%. Now they're 90%. That's significant, but their total volume of searches has still continued to rise. And we're seeing this shift to ChatGPT come more from younger audiences as opposed to older audiences. But the shift is not happening overnight. And so when we have stakeholders begging us to drop everything and try to get more AI citations, it's really important that we keep the data top of mind that, yes, that is something we have to be prepared for, but it's not something we need to do overnight, and it's not something that's going to give us the best ROI right at this particular moment. This is a slow evolution, not necessarily an overnight revolution. When we look at what is changing and what is not, I'm not going to read through all of these, but certainly do so yourself. I will also, by the way, be sending out a copy of these slides within a couple days after today. To anyone who's registered. So you will have a copy of these. But what is changing? The biggest thing I want to really highlight here is that we traditionally think of, everyone wants to talk about leads. How many leads are we driving for visitation, for talent? How many skilled professionals are we attracting? How many companies are we getting to become a lead through our marketing programs? Such a focus has become on that. But with AI, we will over time see that people are going to do more research on their own. They're going to be more informed on their own. And so really where we start to exert influence is at the front end of the process, more on the brand side, so much as the lead generation side. And that is something that will continue to, you're already hearing about it a lot, but we will continue to see this transition from focusing on leads to, I think, trying to make sure that we're on the consideration set at the beginning of the process, rather than just sitting back and waiting to catch people. AI is going to catch a lot of people on its own. What is not changing? I'll just focus on this last one here. The principles of marketing are largely the same, and they will be in an age of AI. Even if you think of all these, I call them XEOs, these different AI engine optimization and generative engine optimization, whatever you want to call it, they're still largely SEO principles. There are a few tweaks, but things like recency and structure continue to remain very important. And so if you're doing those well, you're still also going to do well with AI chats and citations. Keeping things up to date, that is crucially important. It always has been. The structure is changing slightly, but it still follows a lot of the same principles. Internal linking, external linking, all of those things are going to be incredibly important going forward, just as they have been since search engine optimization really came about. So lots of change. We'll also give you, with each of these themes, some more practical takeaways. And so here are the practical takeaways for search. And I really want to focus on this central one here, focusing on updating content as much as creating new content. We are like content creating machines as place brand organizations, but that's not necessarily a good thing. We really should focus more. I would say the breakdown would be about a 60-40 or 70-30 split, depending on how much content you already have. But we should be spending about 70% of our time on creating new content and 30% on updating existing content. Chances are most of the people on this webinar are more like a 90-10, 95-5, possibly 100-0. So just think about that 70-30 or 60-40 in favor of creating new content, and then thinking about how can we spend more time updating existing content. That recency is going to be really important. And if we're not updating the stuff we've already created, we're losing huge opportunities. By the way, for traditional search, also updating existing content is the best way to continue getting inquiries from organic search. Tons of data out there about how keeping blogs and articles updated is a better investment in time than just constantly churning out new stuff along the way. So that is search. The second big fundamental change is around measurement. Now, some of you may have seen declines in traffic. We've seen a lot of articles written about how traffic has taken a nosedive on these high volume websites. The key to remember here is traffic was never the purpose. Traffic was never the purpose in the first place. It has always been about what do people do when they get there. And so if people are coming more informed, then lower traffic may not be a bad thing because they're still going to convert at perhaps a higher rate. So as we look at the data and what that shows, what we're seeing here with regard to measurement and how much it's changing is that people are doing more discovery directly on searches and AI chatbots. So 1 in 4 Google desktop searches end in no click right now. And it's, it's slightly different on mobile, but a lot of mobile traffic is just not ending up coming through to a website. We have referral traffic when AI overviews appears, takes a nosedive. It shrinks by up to 80%. And finally, all social media networks, as we all know, are prioritizing the zero-click content in their algorithms. Do I include a link in my LinkedIn post or do I put it in the comments? That's a question we've all asked recently. And so this zero-click content has become a major, major theme, and it's not going away anytime soon. So when we look at what is changing and what is not, that volume is going to be impacted, but we really need to look at how are we measuring the quality? So instead of thinking about impressions and clicks, let's start thinking more about engagement rates. How much are people actually engaging in the content that we're sharing with them? How many times are we getting cited in AI chats? And perhaps if you have a PR program, how much are you getting out there? How much are you getting brand presence on social media? And then also brand lift. This is a really underutilized way to measure programs, but if you're running an ad campaign, measuring how much that's impacting organic traffic, if it's not measuring it, if it's not impacting it at all, there's a chance your advertising program may not be having much of an impact at all. But if you're seeing that, gosh, our organic traffic is up 50% since we started this ad campaign, that's a sign that there's traction and that people that message is resonating. There's brand recall, and now they're starting to get to your website or engage with your channels via other ways. So getting creative is something that's going to be very important going forward as we do struggle with this measurement challenge, but it's always been important. Data storytelling has arguably been a marketer's greatest skill. The better we are at showing how what we're doing is impacting outcomes, that is incredibly, incredibly important as a part of our daily lives, our daily job, and extending that to then educating stakeholders accordingly. So these skill sets of being able to think critically about what the data is showing us, that is not necessarily changing, but how we're telling that story is probably where we're seeing the shift. So what are some of the practical takeaways? I'm going to draw your attention to this first one here in terms of thinking about marketing assisted leads. So these are long-term decisions that people are making when it comes to place. Companies could take 3 to 6 years to decide when to move an operation. Talent, probably more on a 1 to 3 year timeline. Even visitors. I read an article in the magazine, I put that on my list, but I might not be going there for another 2 to 3 years myself. Maybe a weekend trip, that timeline's a lot less. These are long-term decisions. To judge marketing the same way you judge business development is completely unfair. Business development is trying to get quicker turn opportunities, trying to create those relationships and get sales leads. To judge marketing on that same scale is really unfair. But if we can also show that we're assisting some of these leads, how can we reactivate dormant leads? How can we have a certain number of touch points until someone becomes a lead? Taking these metrics and trying to come up with, again, that storytelling component where we are showing, yes, we might not be getting you the direct leads from our marketing program, but in the meantime, we can absolutely show that we are assisting the process of securing these leads that business development is bringing in, or that we're at least, whether they are marketing leads, early stage marketing leads instead of sales qualified leads, whatever terminology you want to use, how can we show that we've had so many impressions or so many interactions with a particular company or skilled professional before they became an actual lead? Thinking through that and trying to help tell that story, I think, is going to be really, really important as we go forward, and it becomes harder and harder to get that last click attribution within place marketing. So a few ideas here in terms of how you can activate on this, but I really stress thinking about that marketing assisting leads as a new way to tell the story of what your programs are ultimately accomplishing. And just a reminder to pop into the Q&A function if you have any questions. I will be happy to answer those along the way. All right, number 3. We are in another pandemic, and this time it is a blandemic. It is this trend of really bland content. If you have been watching or reading social media of late, you can probably tell what is being AI generated and what is not. Everybody is starting to sound exactly the same. AI has found what creates really high visibility posts, and now everyone has a similar writing style and everyone sounds the exact same. For places which already struggle with differentiation, this is a big risk. So let's start with some of the data. 74% of new web pages include AI content. That's a little bit scary. Although when you consider how much AI has become a part of our daily lives, that is maybe perhaps not all that surprising. A 700% increase in AI slop websites have been detected in the last year. AI slop has become a phrase that's very common in our marketing space overall, and it is not going away anytime soon. We thought we were frustrated with email spam. Now we're getting AI slop. And here's an interesting one. 87% of content marketers lean on generative tools for at least part of their output. That is pretty crazy. But think about yourself. How much are you personally using AI as a part of this? And so this data shows a story of, wow, we're relying on AI quite a bit. And are we relying on it too much, perhaps? So what is changing? I will just stress here that without a strong voice and without strong guidelines on this stuff, everybody does risk sounding the same. And just remember, AI optimizes to the average of the internet. I hope we all think we're above average, and so AI could actually be making us worse, not better. So that's a really important distinction to make. AI does optimize for the average, and we don't want to be average. Our places are not average. So let's think about that the next time we're signing on to ChatGPT. What is not changing? AI does not replace strong frameworks and internal guidelines. If you don't have those frameworks and guidelines, that's something to consider getting, because it will help you to sound more like yourself, even if you are using AI, and it will help you create better finished products that will take less time if you have those frameworks in place. We do have a question here on LinkedIn. Does AI generated content impact the algorithm in any way? Interestingly, all these platforms say that AI is actually demoted within the algorithm, but it's clearly not, because everything that shows up in my suggested for you feature is clearly written by AI, or at least 70 to 80% of it. And so I think there's a big difference between what companies are saying they're doing and what they're actually doing. The AI is absolutely promoting AI generated content. Now, maybe there's a heavy hand in editing that content, but there is definitely a trend of AI sounding material getting picked up by the algorithms and being pushed out there for volume's sake. So yeah, the official company line is very different than what the actual practice is. So when we get to some of the practical takeaways, I just encourage you, start with AI, finish with AI, refine the work with AI, but just please be aware of doing all the beginning, the middle, and the end with AI, because you are going to level out at about average rather than giving your place and your place's voice what it deserves, which is absolutely above average. So be very, very careful about that. And the marketing brief goes a long way, making sure you spend time developing a marketing brief, being clear, being distinctive in that brief. That will help, whether it's a creative agency or whether it's AI, that will help incredibly to get a better finished product. Number 4, we've all heard about the humans versus machines, and when is the takeover going to happen? All the Terminator movies and everything. In one way, this battle is already here when you do look at what some of the data is saying. And so Quora and Reddit, two platforms where these are chat platforms. These are places where people go to have conversation and get insight from other real people. And these are some of the most cited domains in AI overviews. 76% of users rank Reddit higher in honesty and trust compared to other social media. And interestingly, Wikipedia and Reddit, so Wikipedia is edited by people, outrank corporate websites by a large margin for AI citations. This is a big, big trend. And so big that even the AI platforms have started to figure it out. And so they are even relying on these human-generated content platforms. And I think we should all take note about that. In terms of what is changing and what isn't, there's almost, when you think about your marketing or certainly your website, think of it as 2 tracks. You have now one track that is all about the information that you're trying to get discovered by machines. So it gets cited by these AI chatbots and brings people in. You're also trying to get discovered by traditional search. That is bringing people in. But don't forget to be human and to include content that is truly insightful. And so there's this second track that is all about insight. So track 1 is information that gets you discovered on traditional search or AI search. And then there's insight, and that is telling the story of why, and really people are finding their way there. They're getting the information on AI or traditional search. They now want to be educated and blown away. And that is your chance to really show up and make a difference and educate somebody. And that is all about providing the insight. So don't forget these 2 tracks. Information used to be good enough. Now insight is where you stand out. That is the human content. That is, how do I take this information and actually make something come from it that is of greater value? So think about that when you are designing a website, and even in brochures or pitch decks or things like that. How can you provide insight? I really think those that can capture insights at a greater rate will be will benefit them in the future. In terms of what is not changing, let's face it, third-party credibility is what we always try to go for. We want a company to talk well of us. We want a talent to talk well of us. We want a newspaper, a magazine, an online article to speak well of our region. And so that third party credibility has always been important. It's just now it's starting to come from different sources. How can we get third party credibility on Reddit? And so how we're getting that third party credibility is changing, but the fact is it is still highly valuable, and we need to be experimenting with some of these new platforms and seeing how we can get in front of people in a way that brings that insight and that authenticity across. In terms of what to do about it, the whole theme of what I just talked about, invest more in insight-driven content on your social media. Stop just informing and really search for how do I provide something that is going to catch somebody's eye and truly be insightful. That's the way to maximize engagement on social media and to pass along more credibility of your message. We do have a question: how do you balance authenticity with aspiration in city branding, and how can AI support rather than dilute this authenticity? Yeah, that is probably, I might actually save this and do a webinar on it next year. It's a great question. I would say, first of all, searching for insights, that is where authentic content does come through. Similar to what we have here, the third, to get other people to tell your story. That is the best way to pass along authenticity. I honestly, just getting other people to tell your story is the number one best way, and then continuing to do the research and know who you are as a region and what value you provide to the end audience is critically important for that. But I love that question, and I think that is a topic worth diving into even more on a future webinar. All right, finally, we're running out of time here. I know I promised 25 minutes. We're already long. That's par for the course for me, if you know who I am. All right, last one. The future belongs to the integrated, and really, this one is all about the consumer habits, executive habits, skilled workers. They're all experiencing the internet in different ways, and while that is, as we said, changing slowly, it is changing. And we're starting to talk less about marketing funnels and more about marketing journeys. And that's a really important distinction there. People are discovering content in so many different ways now. Search is getting segmented out on a lot more platforms, and we'll continue to see that happen, just as social media has segmented out on different platforms. And so discovery is really shifting. And so as we look at what is changing and what is not, these AI conversations can take a much wider trajectory than what we saw on traditional search. You just ask a question, you get your answers, and that's pretty much it. Maybe you have one or two other searches, and that's all. With these AI conversations, the average number of conversations is 8. And that means people can go in a lot of different directions, which means if you do not have your community voice aligned properly, then people can find a lot of different information about your community that maybe isn't always consistent with one another. If you have one integrated voice across talent, across inward investment, across visitors and talent attraction, or visitor attraction and meetings attraction, all these different things, if you can have one voice aligned across all of those, you're going to be in a much more competitive situation than a community where inward investment is saying one thing, talent saying something completely different, and visitor attraction is saying something completely different. You're at a disadvantage in that regard. And so making sure you have one aligned voice is critically important. What's not changing? Listen, we can never control that entire message, but man, it certainly helps if we can maximize that control with good strategy and with good stakeholder involvement. And so when it comes to now what, I really highly suggest building a shared playbook. Some of you on this call are all under one roof, and that's amazing. You should already have a shared playbook. But if you are disjointed, if you have all these different groups and all these different themes across different agencies, you have to build a shared playbook. and be on the same page with a voice that complements one another. Because as somebody starts to think about living in a place, they want to know what jobs exist, what there is to do. Those are inward investment and visitor attraction topics. What happens if those are all disjointed messages? You have people going in vastly different directions and learning things about your community that maybe aren't accurate or certainly aren't aligned. So how can you build a shared playbook to have one voice that is at that community level very, very consistent? So with that, just in review, it's a search evolution, not revolution. Measurement is definitely getting a makeover. Beware of the blandemic. Humans versus machines already here. Those chat platforms like Quora, Reddit are really rising in importance. Think about how that plays into your marketing strategy, and just making sure you have an integrated approach, if not an integrated team, an integrated approach to place marketing that is speaking from the same hymnal. With that in mind, I just remind you that there are a couple of upcoming webinars, one next month and one in January. Certainly encourage you to join those if you're able to. And we have one on December 11th about websites and generating leads from those, and then one in January about some common mistakes we see with international marketing in particular. So QR codes are there if you'd like to sign up. They take you directly to the registration page. And with that, I just say thank you very much. Please follow us on LinkedIn if you aren't already. And great to have you here. Thank you so much. Have a great rest of your day. And again, I will send a copy of this to you within the next 48 hours, or well, by Monday anyway. Thanks all. Have a great one.